Welcome. Let me tell you something I've never admitted to anyone before. For years, I was trapped in what I call English prison. My mind was full of ideas, but every time I opened my mouth to speak English, it was like a heavy door slammed shut. Silence, stuttering, or worse, saying something that made no sense. I watched others converse effortlessly, while I stood there, smiling nervously, feeling utterly invisible. That was me. Maybe that's you right now. But what if I told you that the key to unlocking that prison door isn't years of study, but something much simpler, something you can start using today? It's not a magic pill. It's a collection of 1,300 powerful sentences. And this is the story of how they set me free. It all changed one rainy Tuesday in a coffee shop. I was trying to order a simple coffee, but the words wouldn't come. I want coffee milk. The barista's patient smile felt like pity. That was my breaking point. I knew grammar rules. I had a decent vocabulary, but I couldn't speak. I couldn't assemble the pieces in real time. I was trying to build a house from scratch every single time I opened my mouth. What I needed wasn't more bricks. I needed pre-built, sturdy rooms I could move into immediately. I needed frameworks, patterns, complete thoughts that I could own and adapt. That's when I discovered the power of learning whole sentences, not just words. Think about it. When you learn the word apprehensive, it's just a data point. But when you learn the sentence, I'm a bit apprehensive about the presentation tomorrow, you've learned so much more. You've learned a natural structure, a common context, and a way to express a real human emotion. You've acquired a ready-made tool for conversation. This was my revelation. I stopped obsessing over individual words and started collecting complete, powerful sentences. But not just any sentences. These 1,300 sentences are carefully curated. They are the engines of everyday conversation, the building blocks of confidence. They cover from simple greetings to complex opinions, from agreeing firmly to disagreeing politely. They are your linguistic toolkit. For example, instead of just saying, I agree, you'll learn to say, that's an excellent point, and it really highlights the core issue. See the difference? One is a basic reaction. The other shows engagement, intelligence, and fluency. It makes people listen. The first group of sentences I mastered were what I call the lifesavers. These are the phrases that keep a conversation alive when your mind goes blank. Sentences like, that's a fascinating way to look at it, or could you elaborate on that, or I need a moment to gather my thoughts. These aren't escapes. They are strategic tools that give you breathing room and make you sound thoughtful. I practiced them until they rolled off my tongue automatically. And suddenly, the fear of silence vanished. I had a safety net. The real magic, however, began with the second category, the connectors. These sentences are the glue of fluent speech. Native speakers don't talk in isolated statements. They link ideas seamlessly. I learned sentences like, speaking of which, that reminds me of, or on a slightly different note, and to build on what you just said. These phrases bought me precious seconds to think and made my speech flow naturally. I wasn't just responding. I was actively directing the conversation. It felt like I had learned the secret choreography of English dialogue. Then came the expression amplifiers. This is where my personality finally broke through. Instead of saying, "I'm happy," I could say, "I'm absolutely thrilled," or "I couldn't be more delighted." Instead of a weak, "It's not bad," I could offer, "It certainly has its merits, though I see a few areas for improvement." These sentences added color, nuance, and confidence to my voice. They allowed me to express not just basic meaning, but feeling and intensity. People didn't just understand me, they started to feel my intent. I implemented a ruthless 5-sentence a-day routine. Every morning, I would select 5 new sentences. I wouldn't just memorize them, I would wear them. I'd say them aloud in different emotions: happy, sad, sarcastic. I would twist them to fit different scenarios. The sentence, "I'm leaning towards the first option," became "I'm leaning towards moving abroad," and "I'm leaning against the proposed plan." One sentence template became 10. My brain was building a network of ready-to-use language, not a dusty dictionary. The first real test was a team meeting. Before, I would sit in the corner, praying not to be called on. This time I was ready. When someone mentioned budget concerns, I heard myself say, "If I may interject, I see your concern about the budget. However, I'd like to highlight the potential long-term return on investment." The room went quiet for a second, but it was a different silence, a silence of respect, not pity. My colleague nodded and said, "That's a valid point. Let's explore that." In that moment, the prison door didn't just open, it vanished. But fluency isn't just about speaking. It's about surviving the listener's reaction. The most terrifying part is always the follow-up question, the unexpected twist in the conversation. I prepared for this with what I call the shields. These sentences are your diplomatic armor for difficult moments. For instance, when asked a point-blank question you can't answer, instead of panicking, you can say, "I don't have that information at hand, but I will find out and get back to you by end of day." This transforms a moment of weakness into a display of professionalism. Or, when faced with blunt disagreement, I learned to avoid defensive, broken English. I had sentences ready. "I appreciate your perspective. My view is shaped by a different experience, specifically," or "that's a fair criticism. Let me re-examine my approach on that point." These sentences stopped conflicts cold and built respect. They allowed me to engage in debates I would have previously fled from. I wasn't just parroting lines. I was using sophisticated social tools that guided the interaction to safer ground. My social life began to transform. I started accepting invitations. At a dinner party, I used a simple connector. "That's hilarious." It reminds me of the time when, and shared a short story. The table laughed, not at me, but with me. I used an amplifier to compliment the host. "This meal is utterly delicious. You have truly outdone yourself." The sincerity, framed in fluent English, was deeply appreciated. For the first time, I wasn't just a passive observer in social settings. I was a contributor, a participant. The sentences were my keys to connection. However, a crucial turning point was understanding that these 1,300 sentences are not a rigid script. They are a palette. The true artistry begins when you start mixing the colors. You combine a lifesaver with an amplifier. Wow, that's a really complex question. I'm tremendously interested in your take on it first. You fuse a shield with a connector. I see where you're coming from. Building on that idea, what if we also considered this is where instinct takes over from memorization? Your brain stops translating and starts orchestrating. I remember the moment this crystallized for me. I was in a negotiation, and the other party made an unreasonable demand. My old self would have frozen. My new self accessed the toolkit almost subconsciously. I heard a calm voice, my voice, say, "I understand what you're proposing, and I see the appeal from your side. However, I have some serious reservations about the sustainability of that model. Perhaps we could explore a third option that satisfies both our core interests." It was a blend of acknowledgement, a shield, and a forward-looking connector. We reached a deal. That was the day I stopped being a student of sentences and became a master of conversation. This journey taught me that true mastery lies in the subtle art of adaptation. This brings us to the most advanced category, the chameleons. These are the core sentence structures that can change color to fit any situation. They are the ultimate confidence builders. For example, take the base sentence. The data suggests a strong correlation between X and Y. Now watch it adapt. In a casual chat, from what I've seen, spending more time practicing really speeds up improvement. In a meeting, the latest metrics suggest a strong correlation between the new campaign and increased website traffic. With a friend, I'm telling you, every time I watch that show, I feel happier. There's a correlation. Mastering the chameleons meant I no longer needed to memorize thousands of isolated phrases. I internalized powerful patterns. The structure, while I appreciate X, I'm concerned about Y, became a workhorse for me. While I appreciate your initiative on this report, I'm concerned about the tight deadline for the team. Or even, while I appreciate the offer, I'm concerned about my schedule this weekend. One framework, infinite applications. This is how you develop instinctive, flexible fluency. The real test wasn't in friendly chats or controlled meetings anymore. It was in the messy, unpredictable real world. A taxi driver asked me about my country's politics. A doctor needed a detailed description of symptoms. A stranger at a gallery struck up a conversation about abstract art. These are the moments that used to terrify me. But with my toolkit, I could navigate them. I didn't need perfect academic English. I needed effective, clear, and confident communication. I used a lifesaver to buy time. That's a big question with a lot of layers. I used a chameleon to structure my thoughts. The general sentiment seems to be shifting toward. It was never about giving a textbook answer. It was about being a competent, engaged human in English. Let me share the single, most important practice tip that cemented everything. It's called shadowing with substitution. I would listen to a fluent speaker in a movie, podcast, or interview and pause after a strong, useful sentence. I'd repeat it aloud exactly as heard to capture the rhythm. Then I would immediately alter one or two key elements. If the line was, "The strategy was fundamentally flawed from the outset," I would say. The assumption was fundamentally flawed from the outset. Or, this plan is fundamentally flawed in its logic. This drilled the patterns into my subconscious while teaching me creative flexibility. I was training my brain to be a nimble speaker, not a recorder. The psychological shift was profound. The anxiety of speaking didn't disappear overnight, but it was replaced by something far more powerful: preparedness. I walked into every interaction knowing I had a vault of reliable, powerful sentences to draw from. The paralyzing fear of the blank mind was gone. This preparedness bred genuine confidence. And confidence, as I learned, is circular. The more confidently you speak, the more people engage with you. The more they engage, the more practice you get. The more practice you get, the more fluent you become. It's a beautiful, self-reinforcing cycle. I had stepped onto that upward spiral. This newfound confidence led me to the final frontier, using English not just to communicate, but to influence and inspire. This is where the power phrases came into play. These are the sentences that carry weight in professional and personal leadership. They are clear, decisive, and often open doors. I practiced phrases like, "I propose we take a step back and look at the broader picture," or, "Based on the evidence, I strongly recommend a different course of action." These aren't just statements. They are assertions of competence. They signal that you are not just participating, you are leading. One of the most transformative realizations was that these sentences gave me control over my own narrative. Before, in job interviews, I was a bundle of nerves, my good ideas lost in broken syntax. Now I could frame my experiences powerfully. Instead of mumbling, "I did good in my project," I could say, "I spearheaded the project initiative which ultimately resulted in a 20% increase in efficiency." It's the same truth, but the sentence structure itself conveys authority and achievement. Language became the lens through which my skills were magnified, not diminished. I also learned the critical importance of tone. The same sentence, delivered with a slight shift in emphasis, can mean something entirely different. I practiced the welcoming, "I'm so glad you're here," versus the sarcastic, "I'm so glad you're here." I practiced expressing genuine curiosity with, "How did you arrive at that conclusion?" versus defensive challenge with, "How did you arrive at that conclusion?" The 1,300 sentences were my sheet music, but I was learning to be the conductor of my own voice. This auditory awareness completed my fluency. Then came the ultimate challenge: public speaking. The thought alone used to trigger a panic attack, but I broke it down using my sentence toolkit. My opening was a lifesaver mixed with an amplifier. Thank you for that warm introduction. It's a genuine privilege to be speaking with you all today. My transitions were all connectors. Having established that, let's turn our attention to, when handling a tough question from the audience, I used a shield and a chameleon. That's an excellent and complex question. The way I've approached that problem is by focusing on 3 scalable principles. I wasn't giving a memorized speech. I was building a conversation with the room using pre-assembled, robust blocks of language. The standing ovation was nice, but it wasn't the point. The point was that I felt calm, clear, and in command. The sentences were my scaffolding, holding me up while my own thoughts and personality shone through. I realized that fluency isn't about knowing every word in the dictionary. It's about having immediate, reliable access to the right frameworks for thought. It's about never being linguistically naked. You always have something appropriate, intelligent, and effective to wear for any occasion. This is the instant confidence the sentences provide. It's not a fake confidence. It's the very real assurance that you are equipped to handle the linguistic demands of the moment. But true fluency is a two-way street. It's not just about the sentences you launch. It's about how you receive and process what comes back. This is where most systems fail. They prepare you to speak, but not to listen and react at the speed of conversation. My next breakthrough came from using the 1,300 sentences as a decoding tool. I started listening for the frameworks behind what native speakers were saying. When someone said, "If you don't mind my asking," I recognized it as a polite shield. When they responded with, "That's precisely what I was driving at," I filed that amplifier away. Active listening became a scavenger hunt for new, powerful structures to add to my collection. I developed a simple but brutal 70-30 practice rule. For 70% of my practice time, I would focus on output, speaking my sentences aloud, recording myself, and shadowing. But for the crucial other 30%, I practiced pure, reactive input. I would listen to a short audio clip just once, then immediately try to summarize the core points using 3 of my powerful sentences. For example, after a news clip, I'd say, "The reporter's main argument is compelling. She highlights a significant gap in policy. However, I'm skeptical about the proposed solution's feasibility. The underlying issue seems to be more cultural than legislative." This trained my brain to think in these fluent frameworks under pressure, directly linking comprehension to sophisticated expression. The barriers weren't just grammatical, they were psychological. The final wall to break was the fear of sounding too polished or like I was using a script. This is a common, paralyzing fear. The antidote was authenticity. I learned to personalize the sentences. The framework I'm a huge proponent of became I'm a huge proponent of starting your day with quiet reading, which was true for me. By injecting my genuine opinions and experiences into the powerful structures, the sentences ceased to be borrowed tools and became my own voice. Fluency met authenticity, and that's when confidence becomes unshakable. Let me give you a concrete example from last week. I was on a conference call with senior executives from 3 different countries. A debate erupted about resource allocation. A year ago, I would have muted my microphone. This time, I listened, used my decoding skill to understand the core of each argument, and then entered the fray. I said, "If I may, I've been weighing both sides of this, and while the efficiency argument is strong, I'm inclined to prioritize long-term stability. A compromise worth exploring might be a phased approach." The room went quiet, then the lead said, "A phased approach, that's a solid middle ground. Let's map that out." I didn't just use a sentence. I used a sentence to demonstrate strategic thinking. The language was the vehicle for my intellect, not a barrier to it. This is the ultimate goal. The 1,300 sentences are not a crutch. They are your training wheels. You use them to build speed, balance, and muscle memory. And one day, you realize you're not thinking about the training wheels anymore. You're just writing. You're just speaking. The structures are so internalized that they form the invisible architecture of your thoughts in English. You are free to focus on the ideas, the humor, the connection, the debate. The language itself becomes a quiet, capable servant to your purpose that is fluent confidence, and it is instantly available the moment you choose to build with these ready-made, powerful blocks of meaning. Now, I want to address the inevitable plateau. There comes a point where you feel comfortable but not exceptional. You're fluent but not formidable. This is where you must become your own curator. The initial 1,300 sentences are your core arsenal, but a truly confident speaker never stops collecting. I started actively hunting for signature sentences, phrases that resonated with my personal style or that filled a gap in my toolkit. When I heard a colleague say, "Let's table that for now and circle back with fresh eyes," I adopted it. It was a more collaborative alternative to a blunt, "Let's stop talking about this." When I read a phrase like a net positive outcome in an article, I added it to my professional vocabulary. This active curation keeps your language alive and growing. The final piece of the puzzle is what I term strategic simplicity. The goal of powerful sentences is not to sound complex, but to sound clear and impactful. Sometimes the most powerful sentence is brutally simple. Learning when to deploy a sophisticated chameleon and when to use a direct, simple phrase is the hallmark of true mastery. For example, in a crisis, "What do you need from me right now?" is far more powerful than a convoluted offer of assistance. I added a list of these clear, commanding, simple sentences to my collection. "I own that mistake." "My priority is X." "I need you to be more specific." They are the bedrock of decisive communication. This journey reshaped my identity. I am no longer the person who hesitates. I am the person who contributes. The transformation was internal long before it was external. The first victory was private, having a full, fluent, imaginary argument in the shower in English. Then, thinking in English without effort. The external victories, the promotion, the successful speech, the deep friendships formed, were simply the visible results of that internal shift. The sentences rebuilt my mindset from one of lack to one of abundance. I stopped thinking, "I can't say that," and started thinking, "How can I best express that idea?" My mission now is to pass this key to you. I am not a linguistic genius. I was stuck. I was silenced. If this system worked for me, it can work for anyone with the discipline to practice not just hard, but smart. It works because it bypasses the broken, traditional model of learning parts and hoping to assemble them under pressure. It gives you the whole, functional units of speech from day one. You start with completeness. You start with confidence. Therefore, I challenge you to start today, not tomorrow. Don't just read this and feel inspired. Act. Open a notebook, digital or physical. Write today's date. Choose just 5 sentences from this talk that resonated with you. They could be lifesavers or amplifiers. Say them aloud right now. Then personalize them, twist them, wear them. Make one of them your mission to use in a real interaction before the day is over. This is how you begin. 5 sentences a day. In a month, that's 150 powerful tools at your command. The momentum you build will be unstoppable. The person you become will be unrecognizable to the person you are today. The door to your own English prison is not locked. It's just heavy. These sentences are the leverage you need to push it open. Walk through. Now, let's talk about the master plan, the actual no-nonsense system to integrate these 1,300 sentences into your very neurology. It's not enough to just know they exist. You must activate them. I divided my journey into 3 distinct phases: download, integrate, and own. Phase 1, download, is purely mechanical. For the first 4 weeks, I consumed sentences with ruthless focus. I listened to them on audio during my commute. I read them aloud every morning. I copied them by hand in the evening. This wasn't about understanding nuance, yet it was about creating deep neural grooves, making the sentences familiar territory for my tongue and my brain. Repetition is the price of admission. Phase 2, integrate, is where the magic starts. This is the practice of intentional use. I created a simple system. Each day, I would choose 3 sentences from my current list. I wrote them on a sticky note stuck to my laptop. My mission was to use each of those 3 sentences at least once in real conversation that day, no matter how forced it felt. The sentence, "I see your point, but I have a slightly different take," was used discussing a movie with a friend. "The data seems to support a different conclusion," was used in a debate about the best route to take during traffic. This forced integration breaks the barrier between study and life. It transforms knowledge into a lived skill. To accelerate this, I employed what I call context switching. The brain learns deeply when it has to retrieve information in different environments. So, I would practice my target sentences while cooking, while walking in the park, while in the elevator. I'd say them in a whisper. I'd say them in my head. I'd imagine using them with different people. This prevented the sentences from being tied to one specific context, like my desk, and made them available everywhere. The sentence became a true tool, not a museum piece I only looked at during study hours. I also built a failure log. This was crucial. Every time I fumbled, missed an opportunity to use a sentence, or used one incorrectly and caused confusion, I wrote it down, not to punish myself, but to debug my process. I reviewed it weekly. I realized I often fumbled sentences involving hypotheticals. If I were in your position, I'd probably. So I doubled my practice on that specific structure. This log turned my mistakes from sources of shame into my most valuable training data. It made my practice intelligent and targeted. This phase is challenging. There will be awkward moments. You will sometimes use a sentence that sounds too formal for the situation. That's fine. It's a necessary step. It's like breaking in new boots. They feel stiff at first, but soon they mold to you and you can walk miles in them. The goal in phase 2 is not elegant perfection. It's successful deployment. Did you retrieve a powerful sentence from memory and use it to convey a complete thought under real-time conditions? If yes, you won. The elegance comes later. This leads us to the pinnacle. Phase 3, own. This is where you transition from using rehearsed sentences to possessing an intuitive linguistic capability. The goal here is to break the sentences apart and recombine them spontaneously. You move from speaking with the sentences to speaking through the principles they embody. This phase is about developing taste, knowing which tool feels right for the moment. It's the difference between a technician and an artist. I started deconstructing my successful uses. Why did I have to play devil's advocate for a moment work so well in that meeting? Because it prefaced disagreement with intellectual curiosity. I extracted the principle, frame opposition as collaborative exploration. Then I could generate new sentences on that principle. Let me push back gently here to test our assumption. Or, for the sake of rigor, what if we considered the opposite? The original sentence was a template. Now I understood the blueprint. This is how you grow beyond the 1300 and into infinite expression. A critical component of owning the language is mastering the music, the rhythm, stress, and intonation that make English sound natural. A sentence said with flat monotone falls flat, no matter how powerful its words. I practiced the musicality by recording myself and comparing to native speakers. Where did their voice rise? Where did it slow down? I applied this to my key sentences. The phrase, "that's actually a brilliant idea," comes alive when you stress actually and brilliant with a warm, rising tone. It dies if mumbled. I spent hours on just a few sentences, perfecting their delivery until they didn't sound recited. They sounded born in the moment. The final test of ownership is the unscripted moment of connection or persuasion. I'll never forget the time I had to comfort an English-speaking colleague going through a hard time. My old self would have been paralyzed, offering only a clumsy pat on the back. But my toolkit had sentences of empathy, not just debate. I heard myself say, "That sounds incredibly difficult. I'm truly sorry you're going through this. Please know I'm in your corner." The sentences were simple, but they were appropriate, heartfelt, and delivered with the correct, tender tone. They served a human need. That's when I knew the language was truly mine. It had become an instrument of my humanity, not just my intellect. Ownership means you begin to think in frameworks, not just phrases. You encounter a situation, and your mind doesn't search for a memorized line. It instantly constructs a fluent response using the patterns you've absorbed. A problem arises at work? Your brain offers. The immediate priority is containment. Next, we need a root cause analysis. You hear surprising news? Your internal monologue is, "I'm completely taken aback." This changes our approach fundamentally. The grammar, the vocabulary, the flow, it's all automatic. You have reached the promised land of instant, confident fluency. The 1,300 sentences are now inside you, dissolved into your communicative bloodstream, powering every interaction without you having to think about them. Now, let's discuss the ripple effect. When you achieve this level of command, it transcends mere conversation. It begins to reshape your reality. Opportunities you once thought were for others suddenly become accessible. You're invited to join important committees, not because you're the loudest, but because you're the clearest. Your social circle widens to include fascinating people from around the globe because you're no longer afraid of the conversation. Your opinion is sought after because you express it with a clarity that commands respect. The sentences did more than teach me English. They taught me how to project competence and cultivate influence. However, a crucial warning: fluency is a living state, not a permanent trophy. It requires maintenance. The moment you stop actively engaging with the language is the moment your confidence begins to rust. My maintenance ritual is simple but non-negotiable. Every morning, I read one article aloud from a major English publication, focusing on the flow of the sentences. I still add one new signature sentence to my collection every week. And once a month, I have a language challenge, like hosting a dinner entirely in English or attending a debate, or even watching a film without subtitles and then summarizing the plot using 5 of my most advanced sentences. This keeps the machinery oiled and ready. Let me share an advanced practice that propelled me further. Thought shadowing. I would take a complex topic like quantum computing or ethical philosophy and explain it aloud to an imaginary audience, forcing myself to use a mix of simple explanations and sophisticated amplifier sentences. The goal wasn't scientific accuracy, but linguistic agility. Could I navigate a difficult concept using my toolkit? Could I say, the fundamental paradox hinges on, and then immediately follow with, in simpler terms, it's like, this exercise stretched my adaptive fluency to its limits and made normal conversations feel effortless. Another profound shift was emotional granularity. Initially, my emotional range in English was basic: happy, sad, angry. With my expanding sentence repertoire, I could express nuanced states. I could articulate feeling disillusioned rather than just disappointed. I could say I was feeling apprehensive yet cautiously optimistic, a complex blend that accurately reflected my inner state. This allowed for deeper, more meaningful connections. People felt understood by me because I could now name the subtle shades of our shared human experience. Language became a bridge to intimacy, not just a tool for transaction. So, where do you stand now? You have the map. You understand the phases. Download, integrate, own. You have the categories: lifesavers, connectors, amplifiers, shields, chameleons, and power phrases. You have the practices: shadowing with substitution, the 70-30 rule, context switching, the failure log, and thought shadowing. This is the complete architecture. The only variable left is your commitment. The path from silence to confidence is not a mystery, it's a method. And the method is in your hands. The first sentence is waiting. The door is open. All that's required is for you to take a deliberate, focused step across the threshold. Your fluent future is not a possibility. It's a decision awaiting your action. But perhaps a quiet doubt is whispering in your mind. This sounds promising, but my accent is strong. What if people don't understand me? What if I still freeze? Let me address this head-on. The goal of these 1,300 sentences is not to achieve a perfect neutral accent. It is to achieve crystal clear communication. A strong accent paired with confident, correct, and well-structured sentences is powerful and intelligent. A weak accent paired with hesitant, broken speech is still ineffective. These sentences provide the structure that makes your message resilient, even if your pronunciation isn't perfect. Clarity of structure triumphs over perfection of sound. The fear of freezing is the fear of the blank page. These sentences are the text already written on that page. When panic rises, you don't have to create, you simply have to recall. This is why the lifesavers and connectors are your primary weapons against freezing. Your first line of defense is never a complex idea. It's a simple, fluent phrase that keeps you in the game. That's an interesting question. Let me think about that for a second. This sentence is your universal pause button. It gives you grace. It turns a potential moment of failure into a moment of thoughtfulness. You are not freezing. You are considering. I want to share a secret about native speakers. They misuse words. They stumble. They use filler words. They sometimes can't find the right term. The difference is they do it without panic and they have fluent recovery phrases. That is what you are acquiring. You are not acquiring robotic perfection. You are acquiring the same toolkit of recovery and flow that a native speaker has unconsciously absorbed over a lifetime. You are just doing it consciously and therefore much faster. Now, consider the power of specificity. One of the most dramatic upgrades in your speech will come from replacing vague language with precise, powerful sentences. Instead of saying, the thing is that stuff is bad for the environment, you will say, the core issue is that single-use plastics have a devastating long-term impact on ecosystems. The second statement isn't just clearer, it makes you sound like an expert. It commands attention. The 1,300 sentences train you to think and speak in these complete, impactful thoughts. You stop dealing in vague things and stuff and start dealing in defined concepts and arguments. This journey is as much about unlearning as it is about learning. You must unlearn the habit of self-editing before you speak. You must unlearn the apology in your tone. You must unlearn the belief that you are less intelligent because you express yourself in a second language. Every time you use one of these powerful sentences correctly, you are rewriting that belief. You are providing yourself with concrete evidence of your own capability. The confidence is not a pep talk. It is a conclusion drawn from repeated, successful performance. You are building a portfolio of fluency victories, one sentence at a time. Let's talk about execution. The bridge between knowledge and result is a concrete daily plan. You don't need more information. You need a schedule. Here is the exact regimen I followed during my most transformative 90 days. It's non-negotiable and takes 30 to 60 minutes a day, broken into 2 sessions. Morning session, 20 to 30 minutes, the download. This is input only. Listen to 10 to 15 of the powerful sentences on audio. Don't just hear them. Mouth the words along silently. Feel their rhythm. Then, read them aloud from the page, clearly and deliberately. Finally, write the 5 most challenging ones by hand. Writing engages motor memory, etching the sentences deeper. This isn't about creativity, it's about implantation. Evening session, 30 minutes, the integration. This is output and adaptation. Take the same 5 sentences from the morning. First, perform shadowing with substitution as described. Then, create hypothetical dialogues. Imagine a coworker says X. You respond with one of your sentences. Then they say Y. You respond with another. You are simulating real-world use in the safety of your room. This builds the neural pathways for retrieval under pressure. Beyond the daily drills, you need weekly missions. Each week, choose one social environment to be your testing ground. Week 1, a coffee shop. Your mission is to use one connector sentence with the barista. Looks like it's going to be another busy day for you. Week 2, a work email. Your mission is to use one power phrase to frame a request. To ensure we're aligned, I propose we sync briefly tomorrow. Week 3, a friend. Your mission is to use an amplifier to express enthusiasm. I'm absolutely captivated by that story. These small, low-stake missions normalize the act of deploying your new language. A tool that became indispensable was my voice memo app. I would record myself answering a random question off the internet, like, "What's the future of remote work?" for 2 minutes without stopping. I would then listen back, not for accent, but for fluency holes. Where did I hesitate? Where did I use a weak word? I would then rewrite that part of the transcript using a powerful sentence and re-record it. This cycle of record, analyze, correct, and re-record accelerated my growth exponentially. It turned me into my own most effective coach. The most critical mindset is to focus on progress, not perfection. Your measure of success is not, did I sound like a news anchor? It's, did I use a powerful sentence where last week I would have remained silent or mumbled? Celebrate the retrieval, not just the elegance. Every time you successfully pull a sentence from your memory bank in a live situation, you have strengthened that muscle. That is a win. Collect these wins. They compound. The compound interest of small, daily acts of courage with the language is what builds unshakable confidence. You are not learning to speak. You are building a habit of speaking confidently. The final frontier, and perhaps the most rewarding, is the professional arena. Here, the 1,300 sentences transform from a communication tool into a career accelerator. I developed specialized banks within my collection for high-stakes scenarios. The negotiation bank included sentences like, "What would it take for us to reach a mutually agreeable solution?" Or, "I understand your constraints. Let's explore if there's flexibility on the timeline." The presentation bank had, "The key takeaway I want to leave you with today is," and to put this into perspective, the conflict resolution bank, "I sense we might be talking past each other. Let me rephrase my understanding." This specialized preparation meant I walked into high-pressure meetings not with anxiety, but with a strategic arsenal of language. I wasn't just hoping to communicate. I was preparing to direct the conversation toward a desired outcome. The sentences became levers I could pull to diffuse tension, assert value, or build consensus. English stopped being a barrier to my professional success and became its vehicle. An advanced technique I developed in this phase was concept-led generation. Instead of being led by a sentence, I would start with a complex concept I needed to express, like conditional agreement or strategic pivot. Then, I would construct a sentence on the spot using the frameworks I'd mastered. For conditional agreement, my brain would assemble. I can tentatively agree to those terms on the condition that we formalize the delivery milestones in writing. The parts, the tentative agreement phrase, the conditional connector, were all from my toolkit, but the specific combination was created in real time for the need. This is fluent thinking. This ability reshaped my professional identity. I was no longer seen as the competent non-native speaker. I was seen as a clear thinker and effective communicator, period. I recall leading a project with a team in London. During a critical delay, I said, "Setbacks are data. This one tells us our testing phase was underscoped. The corrective path forward is to reallocate resources from phase 2 immediately." The response wasn't about my English. It was about the clarity of the strategy. The language was invisible, which is the highest compliment. It simply served the idea. The psychological shift is profound when you realize you're thinking in English, not about English. The internal monologue switches. Your dreams might even incorporate it. This is the state of cognitive fluency, where the language is no longer a separate subject, but the very medium of your thought process for certain tasks. It's a form of code switching that becomes effortless. You choose the language that fits the context, not because you have to, but because it's the most efficient tool for the job. So, what is the ultimate outcome of this journey with 1,300 sentences? It is not just fluency, it is agency. It is the restored power to choose how you engage with the world. It is the removal of the filter that dimmed your intelligence, your humor, and your personality. You get to decide when to speak, what to say, and how to say it with impact. The hesitation is gone. What remains is your authentic voice, now amplified, confident, and heard. This is the promise, not just to speak English, but to reclaim your voice in it. Now, consider this. Fluency is not a ceiling, it's a foundation. Once laid, you can build anything upon it. For me, the most unexpected reward was the cultural fluency that followed. The 1,300 sentences were my passport, but now I was collecting stamps. I began to understand not just what people said, but why they said it, the humor, the sarcasm, the subtle politeness, the coded messages in professional settings. My comprehension deepened because I was no longer scrambling for literal meaning. I was analyzing intent. This is the leap from speaking English to understanding English-speaking cultures. This cultural layer introduced a new practice, nuance hunting. I started listening for the sentences that carried cultural weight. In British English, with the greatest respect, often signals strong disagreement. In American business, let's circle back can mean anything from later to never. I added these nuanced interpretations to my sentence collection, turning it into a living cultural guidebook. My conversations became more sophisticated because I was responding to the unspoken subtext as well as the words. I wasn't just communicating, I was connecting on a cultural wavelength. The confidence from this mastery spills into every aspect of life. It fosters a mindset of abundance, not scarcity. You stop thinking, I hope they understand me, and start thinking, I have something valuable to contribute. This shift is transformative. It encourages you to take on roles you would have declined, volunteering to lead a workshop, applying for an international assignment, hosting a podcast. The sentences give you the verbal dexterity to try, and the successes that follow give you the identity of someone who can. Let me offer you a perspective for the long haul. There will be days you feel stagnant. The solution is not more sentences, but deeper engagement with the ones you have. Choose one sophisticated sentence per week and dissect it. The initiative, while well-intentioned, suffers from a fundamental misalignment of resources. Break it down. Why use well-intentioned instead of good? What does fundamental misalignment imply that bad planning does not? Then, write 5 variations. This deep dive into nuance will renew your sense of progress and refine your expressive precision. Ultimately, this journey with 1,300 powerful sentences taught me that language mastery is a mirror for personal growth. The discipline required to practice daily, the courage to sound awkward, the resilience to persevere after a misunderstood comment. These are not just language skills. They are life skills. You're not merely building a vocabulary. You are building character. You are cultivating the patience to learn, the humility to make mistakes, and the confidence to rise again. Each sentence mastered is a small victory over self-doubt. Each successful conversation is proof of your own capability. So, as you move forward, remember that the goal was never perfection. The goal was always freedom. The freedom to think, express, and connect without barrier. The freedom to be your full self in a global language. You now hold the key, a key made not of one piece, but of 1,300 interlocking parts, each one a step, each one a word, each one a sentence toward your liberation. The path is clear. The tools are in your hands. Your fluent, confident voice is not a distant dream. It is the next sentence you choose to speak. Now, let's confront a common obstacle, the feeling of being an imposter. Even with a vault of sentences, you might think, this isn't the real me. I'm just performing. This is a crucial juncture. The truth is, all communication is a performance to some degree. We choose our words based on context. The real you is not defined by your limited vocabulary in a second language. It's defined by your thoughts and intent. These sentences are merely the higher quality medium through which your authentic self can finally be transmitted. You are not being fake. You are upgrading your transmission equipment. To solidify this, practice expressive anchoring. Take a core belief or a story you love to tell in your native language. Now, laboriously translate it into English using your most powerful sentences. Craft it. Polish it. This becomes your anchor story, a piece of your identity, now fully fluent. For me, it was the story of why I left my hometown. I practiced it until I could tell it with the same emotion and emphasis as in my mother tongue. Having a few of these anchors means you always have a reservoir of authentic, fluent self-expression to draw from. It proves to you that the fluent speaker is you. Another advanced tactic is speed drilling. Fluency is as much about speed of retrieval as it is about quality. Set a timer for 1 minute. Choose a category like agreeing and disagreeing. Now, fire out as many different powerful sentences from that category as you can. I'm entirely on board with that. I share your sentiment completely. I have to disagree, and here's my reasoning. I see it differently based on. The goal is to create automaticity, to break the sentences out of their careful boxes and make them readily available for fast-paced exchange. This drill builds the mental muscle for quick, confident responses. Consider also the power of specialization. Once you have the general foundation, become fluent in your passion. If you love gardening, learn the 50 powerful sentences to describe it. The soil needs better aeration. This cultivar thrives in partial shade. I'm trying to encourage more robust root development. If you love finance, learn those sentences. This targeted fluency makes your conversations deeply satisfying and positions you as knowledgeable. Your confidence will soar in these domains, and that confidence will bleed into all your other interactions. Finally, remember that language is a gift you give to others as much as to yourself. When you speak clearly and confidently, you reduce the cognitive load on your listener. You make understanding you easy. You become a pleasure to talk to. This transforms your relationships. People lean in to listen. They engage more deeply with your ideas. You are no longer a problem to be deciphered. You are a partner in dialogue. This is the ultimate reward, the effortless, joyful connection that is only possible when the barrier of language has been dissolved by conscious, powerful, and confident speech. This brings us to the culmination, the point where practice transforms into permanent identity. There's a moment when you stop doing the exercises and start being a fluent speaker. The sentences have done their job. They have rewired your brain, creating what I call the neural superhighway. This is the instant, effortless pathway between a thought and its fluent expression. A question is asked, and a powerful, grammatically sound, appropriately nuanced sentence is the first thing that arrives in your mind. It is no longer a choice. It is your default setting. To reach this point, you must pass through the final gate, the 30-day identity challenge. For 1 month, you conduct an internal campaign. You stop saying, "I am learning English." You start declaring, "I am a fluent English speaker." You make every decision from that identity. In a meeting, a fluent speaker would contribute, so you contribute using your sentences. At a party, a fluent speaker would tell a story, so you tell one using your frameworks. You act as if until it becomes because. This isn't false, it's prophetic. You are living into your future self, and your brain will scramble to catch up, activating all those neural pathways you've built. The maintenance now becomes joyful, not laborious. You read a novel and savor a beautifully constructed sentence, adding it to your collection for pleasure, not duty. You watch a film and appreciate the witty dialogue, unconsciously absorbing its rhythm. You might even begin to dream in English, your subconscious mind freely playing with the language it now owns. This is the full integration. The language is no longer an external system you reference. It is a part of your internal landscape. A powerful practice to seal this identity is teaching back. Explain one of these powerful sentence concepts to someone else who is struggling. Teach them the difference between a lifesaver and a power phrase. When you teach, you crystallize your own understanding. You also witness your own expertise, which reinforces your new identity. You are no longer just a student. You are a guide. This solidifies your confidence at its core. So, what is the final truth? The 1,300 sentences are the scaffolding, but the magnificent building that now stands is you. Your ideas, your personality, your intelligence, finally visible to the English-speaking world without distortion. The hesitation, the fear, the self-doubt are ghosts of a past self. You have not just learned phrases. You have forged a new version of yourself who operates in the world with greater reach, influence, and connection. The journey began with a key, a simple key of 1,300 parts. You have used it. You have unlocked the door. Now, step through and explore the vast, expansive landscape that has been waiting for you all along. It is a landscape of conversations awaiting your voice, ideas awaiting your expression, and connections awaiting your authentic presence. Your fluent life begins now, not because you have finished learning, but because you have finally started living in the language. Speak. The world is listening.